I'm Justin Tyner, and this is my wife, Christi. We've been married now for about 11 years, but we met back in college through a blind date. A friend of mine I grew up with at Olive. It was totally a blind date.
It was not a blind date. And it took us about 14 months before we got pregnant with our first baby. And unfortunately, when we went to the doctor for the second ultrasound, the baby's heart had stopped beating. And so we ended up miscarrying that child. Took us about 6 more months to get pregnant with the second child, and ended up miscarrying that one as well. And then a few months later, had our third miscarriage. We finally got pregnant with our fourth baby, and that turned out to be our beautiful little daughter, Charlie, in 2009.
We started trying again, became pregnant shortly after, probably a year, right around a year after Charlie was born, and we miscarried again. Shortly after that miscarriage, we got pregnant again, and this time it was Braden, our little boy, who is 2 years and 2 days born from Charlie.
At about 6 months, I noticed that Braden just was a little weaker. He was okay. He was still hitting his milestones, and cognitively he was fine, but just his muscle strength, I felt like, was just a little more wobbly and weak. At about a year's of age, we went to a neurologist. The doctor came in, and he was, he had a big book full of results because, a mapping of all of his DNA. And he went through the first page, and he said, we tested for this, and he came up negative, and we tested for this, and he's fine. We tested for this, and he doesn't have it, and he kept turning these pages, and he got about halfway through that big stack, and I realized he's going through every page. He's about to come to a positive. He would have just said everything was fine and not gone through any more pages unless he was about to come to a positive. And at that time, I started clenching Justin's hand, and he, I think, realized it at about the same time. We both started clenching each other's hand, realizing that he's about to come to something. And sure enough, he said, your son has a deletion on his 17th chromosome. A cystinosis patient basically grows and functions just like anyone else at first, but then their cells can't let all the garbage, or what they call cysteine, out. And so it just builds up and builds up until it destroys the cell. So every cell in their body, as they grow, begins to just kill itself. The first organ to show signs of this is the kidneys. And so most cystinosis patients, their first medical procedure they will have will be a kidney transplant, which will prolong life until the next organ decides that it's ready to fail.
We had to administer the meds, and again, we're talking about a less than a year and a half old kid, 16 months or so, when he started the medicine every 6 hours. So from 2 o'clock in the morning, you give him his meds. At 8 o'clock, you give him meds. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, again at 8 at night, and then the alarm goes off at 2 o'clock again in the morning. And the meds are in a capsule that it's a powdery substance in the capsule that with a newborn, you can't give a capsule. So when you have to break the capsule open and put it in milk or something and give it to the baby, it smells horrible. It caused a lot of stomach issues. Braden would throw up probably every other time at least.
I know that the Lord says children are a blessing, so, but there was that fear that, another one of our children would have this disorder. And again, my wise husband said to me, look at that kid, speaking of Braden, and said, wouldn't you take 10 more like him? And I thought, yeah, heck yeah, I would take 10 more like him. So let's do this. we're not gonna let fear rule our lives.
So January 28th of 2016, Dax Justin Tyner came into this planet. They did, because of the risk of cystinosis, want to do the blood work, the chromosomal testing, just to make sure that we ruled that out with him.
And sure enough, that evening I got a phone call, and I saw it was a pediatrician, no big deal, and I picked up the phone, and she gave us the news that Dax's genetic testing had come back.
Christi was sitting on the couch in the living room, and I could see her when she got the call, and I just kind of mouthed at her, cystinosis, and she immediately started crying, and kind of looked at the kitchen and shook her head, and I just put my face in my hands and had a moment myself.
Justin, got us all in his lap, all of us, and
all
just, just prayed over our family. And I can honestly say from that point on, we landed like on the will of God. Like, I would have never chose this for my child, but the creator of all things did, and there must be a good reason.
His plan is always better than ours, every time. Life's not about healthy babies. It's not about healthy babies. It's about if my baby being having some physical issues and having to be on a lot of medicine can glorify God more than him being healthy, then as hard as it is, man, that's what we desire.
I can't think of anything that the Lord asks us to do in the Bible that's not hard. In some way, at some point in your life, it's going to be hard. And so I just never want them to come to those things that God's asking of them and say it's too hard. I want them to have it ingrained in their little minds. Tyners do hard things, and it makes us more like Jesus every step of the way.